12 years after Azerbaijan was proclaimed independent, after the collapse of the Soviet bloc, its capital Baku was once again one of the world's greatest oil meccas. As early as the end of the 19th century, the majors were fighting fiercely to take control of the giant oil fields of the Caspian Sea. Because of their size, these rich oil fields made Tsarist Russia one of the world's largest producers of hydrocarbon. The majors, who had been driven away after the Bolshevik Revolution, returned to Black Gold's new promised land at the beginning of the 1990s, more powerful than ever. Although estimates of the oil reserves are now considered to be exaggerated, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan and the Caspian Sea offshore oil fields are an important source of oil for the world market. And the majors, in contrast to Russia, are on good terms with the local authorities. But the Caspian Sea countries are more landlocked than Siberia and so face serious oil transport problems. The first option was to build a pipeline through Iran to the Persian Gulf. But although it was the shortest route and cheaper than other options, the United States rejected it for geostrategic reasons.
There's a concept, a term we coined here called pipeline politics. And the problem is that Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan are landlocked. They're at the wrong end of the Black Sea. And to get the oil out, they either have to pipe the oil out through Russia and then through ship out through the Bosporus, which creates problems. There is an environmental disaster in the waiting in terms of tankers going in and out of the Bosporus. Or a proposed pipeline from Baku up to Tbilisi in Georgia down to Ceyhan in Turkey. Now there's some problems with this line also. In the sense that Georgia is not one of the most stable countries. It's one of the most difficult, dangerous places in the world, and it's very corrupt.
Despite this and the anger of the Russians, who control Caspian oil, a consortium of 11 majors, led by the Anglo-American BP Amoco, agreed on the BTC project for a pipeline running from Baku through Tbilisi to Ceyhan on the Mediterranean Sea. On September the 18th, 2002, construction began with a grand ceremony attended by the American Secretary of State for Energy and the heads of state of Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey, the countries through which the pipeline was to run. The project has broken nearly every record. It's the most expensive at $3.3 billion. It's the longest pipeline at 1,750 kilometers. It is made of 150,000 welded and buried segments. It has 1,500 rivers and 3,000-meter-high passes to cross. And it avoids protected environmental sites, such as the region of Bozhony in Georgia, famous for its mineral water. This is the price to pay for 1 million barrels of Caspian oil a day, flowing towards the west and perhaps one day replacing the almost exhausted North Sea oil. This new access route to the Mediterranean means tankers no longer have to pass through the Bosphorus, which joins the Black Sea ultimately to the Mediterranean. It is already severely congested, with 50,000 ships and 10,000 tankers passing through every year, and consequently, there is constant threat of environmental catastrophe. The newest promised land for oil is the Gulf of Guinea, a land that for years had been the starting point of the slave trade. The extent of the Gulf of Guinea's oil wealth was revealed at the turn of the 21st century. In 2001, 7 of the 8 billion barrels of oil reserves discovered in the world came from West Africa. The oil industry in Africa rapidly expanded after World War II, and again after the collapse of the colonial era. But the oil fields remained the playground of the former colonial powers, who still controlled the economy, politics and culture of their former overseas dominions. France launched into a great African exploration campaign, but the images praising the French oil magnates' know-how hid a far less glorious reality. Franco-African cooperation was spearheaded by de Gaulle in the 1960s, and it flourished, especially in the oil countries of the Gulf of Guinea, where the state company Elf Aquitaine was strongly established. In these newly independent countries, corruption was rife, and relations between their leaders and the majors were heavily based on bribery. Elf Aquitaine, like others, had to submit to corruption with the complicity of the French government. It was seen as the price to pay to maintain a stake in African oil. During the following decades, the state company went too far. Secret funds, embezzlement, fraudulent accounting, with neither liberal nor conservative governments asking any questions. It was only after 8 years of investigation, led by 2 civic-minded, persistent judges, that the Elf affair was exposed. Under the scrutiny of the world's media, the trial seemed endless and publicly shocking. However, Elf was by no means the only company to resort to such practices. It was a necessary evil for any company that wanted to work in African oil. According to Pentagon experts, when the oil from the Gulf of Guinea became a strategic priority, the United States too paid heavily in bribes. In the Gulf of Guinea, the crude oil is pumped from the sea almost directly to the tankers. What should represent an incredible source of wealth for countries like Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea and Angola only benefits a minority of powerful people. Worse still, while oil flows into the tankers, it has caused an oil crisis for the people. The fuel shortage for the people is such that it regularly provokes angry disputes around petrol stations. And the exasperated people are so desperate that they even steal oil directly from the pipelines by piercing holes in them. The risk of explosion is so dangerous that it can lead to disastrous consequences, easily destroying entire villages. But for these underdeveloped countries themselves, who supply 16% of America's crude imports, what is the value of the underprivileged people compared to the wealth of the oil? This begs the question, could the West manage one day without Saudi oil? Many believe not.